Whatever happened up there caused chunks of debris to begin falling towards the planet, and the chunks of bits and pieces began to affect everything they touched, corroding them until there was really nothing left of them, making those chunks dangerous. Albedo says it's raining malware as Ben asks Azimuth what they should do, but the first thinker says that he'd have to examine what's left before he could figure that out. Rook tells them that they may need to put that idea on hold as they hear screaming and see malware standing in front of them angrily. Malware says that he has destroyed Azimuth's precious greatest creations, and he will do the same for the Omnitrix, but the first thinker tells him that he's unimpressed by someone causing misfortune towards others. The Mechamorph says that nothing he does could ever impress him, could it? Referring to Azimuth as father. Ben changed into Kickenhawk and began to fight Malware as the latter asked if he'd like a repeat of what happened last time, and Ben tells him there won't be a repeat of last time. He and Malware continued fighting one another as he'd absorbed Rook's proto-tool and began using it as a weapon. Malware grabbed Ben and tried to overtake the transformation like he did with feedback as Kickenhawk called out for Rook to get Azimuth to safety. The corrupted Mechamorph then started blasting at them, distracted as a laser shot cut off bits of Malware's arm as Ben dropped down to the ground, changing back to human. We see that it was Ship that blasted Malware as the hatch opened up and Max and Gwen were there to help grab Ben and to get him aboard, along with Blue Kid and Dreba, the Galvan technicians, for the plumber base located on Earth. They managed to get everyone aboard before Malware could react and flew off. Rook asked how they were able to find them, and Gwen says that she's gotten to be an expert when it comes to tracking Ben down over the years. And Max says he called her when they didn't show up on the planetary GPS. We see Gwen looking worried about Ben as this had happened before to him, and it wasn't a good situation with her fiddling with a small ring on her finger that had a band of black gold and an emerald heart in the center of it. Max asked them how Ben is doing, and they tell him that he'll come around soon, and Ben slowly began to come to right about that time, sitting up and holding his head as Gwen hugged him. He hugged her back, glad to see her, but was confused as to what had happened and how they got there exactly. After filling Ben in, they then got down to business, with Azimuth saying that Malware's bits were only scattered across a specific area, which meant that if they hurry they can get to the specialized controls areas to activate firewalls to protect the planet's core from Malware, though briefly, it would give them some breathing room. Gwen asked what they were going to do while that was going down, and the first thinker says that she, Rook, and himself would be taking Ship to go to investigate Galvan B to see if there was any way to possibly fix what's going on right now. Ben says that he'll focus on taking down Malware while Grandpa Max goes with the Wonder Twins to get the firewall controls working, and Azimuth nods, saying that Ben's getting to be keeping pace with the likes of him and that he's impressed with his way of thinking, with Albedo asking what he should do. Those that haven't met Albedo yet turn to him confused. They ask who he is, and Ben says he'll explain later. If he wants to help, fine, go with Max and the Wonder Twins as backup. They then let them drop off with Blue Kid and Dreba using Galvan jetpacks, and Max being flown by Albedo in the form of Stinkfly. They see that Malware had grown considerably in size, and Ben stands onto the platform hatch with Gwen kissing him and telling him good luck. Ben tells her to be careful and then turns to Ship's console and nods, with them opening up the hatch, letting Ben drop down out of there. Ben activated the Omnitrix and changed into the new heavy hitter, a large bird with 4 monstrous wings that wasn't as large as way big, but maybe came up to their knee. He let out a loud piercing cry as his wings began to flap and created the sound of thunder booming as they did so. He then asked Malware if he's ready to try that again. Malware tried to grab at Ben again, planning on the same tactic, but he kept flying around out of the way as storm clouds began to form around them. They demanded he hold still as they blasted at him at the same time as trying to grab him, giving him a harder time to avoid them from getting their hands on him and trying to rip out another transformation. Being grabbed by a Talon, Ben says that Thunderwing was full of surprises, as it had begun to rain around around them as the corrupted mechamorph continued making their way up their body of this transformation, believing them to be foolish. Before Ben let out another of those piercing cries and lightning struck the two of them while they were covered in rainwater. The difference being Thunderwing was unaffected by it, though Malware was. The corrupted mechamorph says that his pieces were almost to the core, but then something stopped them as they questioned what's going on, to which Ben tells them that that would be his friends. Unlike Malware, he's got a team he can actually rely on instead of always having to only trust and rely on himself. That's why he's already lost. Getting angry, the corrupted mechamorph pulled his pieces from the planet and used them to overwhelm Ben by grabbing at him with every one of them before absorbing him into themselves. We see that Ben was flashing back to when he'd lost feedback and what Tetrax had told them, that you learn from failure. The young Ben from the flashback asks our Ben if he'd learned anything from it, and our Ben says that he did. Losing is painful, but it's a part of life, no matter how devastating it is. He learned that they could be a capable fighter that could go toe-to-toe with the likes of Crab and 6-6 and others, with or without the watch. That it's okay to still be upset because pain of loss doesn't really go away when it's someone important to you. But it was time they stopped beating themselves up over it and started beating down the one who's really responsible, Malware. Ben's Omnitrix lit up and we see Malware on a rampage as a blast of energy had blasted out the top of their head, and a familiar alien we haven't seen since OS appeared smiling and having a blast, asking if they missed him. He jumped down and the corrupted mechamorph then tried to blast at them as Ben absorbed the energy before firing it back at them, having a blast, remembering how much he used to love being feedback. Galvanic mechamorphs began falling from the sky, making Malware's form fall apart as they reformed after breaking him apart, and we see the body of the real Malware, not the added on stuff, now the size of a normal mechamorph, and Ben says that they gotta have some way to take them down for good. Azimuth suggests that perhaps they could try using the repaired helixes of Galvan B. Now that they've re-energized the mechamorphs, there's still enough energy left for what Ben was planning to do. Smiling, he attached his antennae to the device and says that it's time to crank up the power, as he drew energy from them and blasted Malware, dusting him in the process. Max and the others show up afterwards, and Azimuth says that they must do one thing before they can leave, and we then cut to them waiting around in a sitting area as Ben had his head in Gwen's lap and she was gently playing with his hair, while Ship was napping and the others were waiting, getting impatient. Finally, they brought them out to the others, a now stabilized Albedo. He'd taken on a different set of physical characteristics from Ben's parents, as he had blonde hair and brown eyes in his newly stabilized state, and his Omnitrix knockoff was upgraded a bit to be more stable as well. Ben then says now they just gotta explain that to his parents.